This podcast is hosted on podhome.fm, the most modern podcast hosting platform. Podhome offers unlimited episodes and podcasts, and unlimited use of Podhome AI, which generates transcripts, clips, chapters, title suggestions, show notes, and much more. And all of that for just $15.99 a month or $185 per year. That's a steal. So go to podhome.fm and start your 30-day trial now. And enjoy the show with Joe.
Transmitting live from the Asylum Studios, deep in the bowels of Southwest Texas. It's the Joe Rooz Show. The show where we talk about anything and everything. Where nothing is sacred, nothing is watered down, and nothing is PC.
All right. Hey, folks, this is Joe Rooz, and it is great to be with you once again, transmitting live, of course, at the Asylum, and doing the very best we can to bring you the best quality talk radio we could muster without all the bluster. Folks, welcome to the show tonight. Now, tonight, we got a great guest lined up for you. Tonight, we are diving into a question that sounds like science fiction, but may actually be a lot closer to reality than you might think. What if artificial intelligence could accurately predict future events? And more importantly, who should control that kind of power? My guest tonight is going to be Jordan Miller, founder of the Satori Network, an open source AI project that's attempting to build what he calls a future oracle. Now, we're going to be talking AI, blockchain, prediction, decentralization, and, whether humanity is prepared for what's coming next. But of course, as always, before we get into it, we're going to take care of some of the housekeeping that we normally do. So folks, if you would, please don't forget to head over to the website. It's joerooz.com. That's joerooz.com. It's up on your screen in the show notes. Make sure you head over there and check it out. And look for the contact form. It's hidden in that little pancake in the upper right corner of the page. Open that thing up. Fire us off any questions, comments, cares, or concerns that you might have. Maybe you have a complaint. You shouldn't, but you might. Maybe you have a suggestion for a guest. Maybe you have a topic you'd like us to try to cover on the show. Let us know. Feed it over to us, and we'll do the very best we can to get that to you. Also, if you don't like to use the web form, because I don't like using them either because those captcha things just drive you crazy, you can email us directly at info@joerooz.com. That's info@joerooz.com. Also, folks, please don't forget that this is a live show, weeknights, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Also, our Sunday show every Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, all live on Rumble at rumble.com/Joe Rooz. Or if you're still on YouTube for whatever reason, you can still follow the show there. We haven't received our third strike yet, so we're still up there. You could also follow us there at youtube.com/@Joe Rooz. So make sure you follow us there and drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys. Now, also, please don't forget, very, very important to the algorithm is key. And I think Jordan will explain that probably a little bit better than I can. But algorithm is key. That's the main thing. That's the way we get found. And the way you can help us with the algorithm is to like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, and your followers. That way you'll spread the love, the joy, the intelligent conversations that we have here on the Joe Rooz Show. All right. And let's see what else. Oh, yeah. We wouldn't be having this conversation tonight if it wasn't for Podmatch. Podmatch, Tinder for podcasters. Host sets up an algorithm, guest sets up an algorithm, the algorithm the algorithm puts it all together, and you can match or pass. It's a great little system. It works perfectly, and it's a lot of fun. But seriously, though, the thing with Podmatch is, most podcast guests and hosts spend hours researching connection, coordinating interviews, and, working on the administrative tasks while really only spending, believe it or not, about 10% of the time on what really matters, and that's recording impactful podcast episodes. What Podmatch does is it enables the guest and the host to reclaim that time through automations and through streamlined processes so they can focus on creating content that really serves listeners. Now, for more information about that, just head over to podmatch.com/member/Joe. It's up on your screen in the show notes later. podmatch.com/member/Joe. And that's the profile page for our show right here. Take a look at it. If it's something you would be interested in, we encourage you to sign up. You can sign up right there through our profile page. And hey, you never know. You might end up being a guest on our show. which would be pretty neat, I think. Anyway, so check it out, podmatch.com/member/Joe. That's podmatch.com/member/Joe. All right. Well, without any further ado, tonight we're diving into something that really sounds like it came straight out of science fiction, but it might be closer to reality than you think. We've got Jordan Miller joining us tonight. He's the founder of the Satori Network, a platform trying to combine artificial intelligence and blockchain to do something pretty wild, and that's predict the future. Now, he's got a background in philosophy, information systems, crypto development, and now he's building what he calls a future oracle. We're going to break down exactly what that means, whether it's genius, whether it's nonsense, and what happens if this kind of tech actually works. Hey, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I know we've been trying to get this show in for quite some time. We've had a couple of reschedules, and mostly on my fault. I explained my reasons for that prior to getting the show started today. But I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad we're going to get this conversation. And this is something I found very interesting when I came across your profile on Podmatch, and so I needed to get you on, and I'm glad we were able to do that. Now you started in philosophy. How does someone go from studying the nature of intelligence to building AI systems?
Philosophy has always interested me. The natural world has always interested me. Science. I used to watch Bill Nye as a kid every day, and so just understanding, what the truth is. I've just been the truth seeker. I just want to know what's real. So, and philosophy being, it's kind of how to describe the truth. It's kind of what do you name things is what philosophy is. So anyway, it was just a journey. Everybody's journey is kind of crazy, I think. So,
in some ways, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've never heard anybody explain philosophy that way. That's a really good explanation for that. Putting a name to things. That's pretty neat. I like that.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be what they do. Armchair philosophy. It's like you're arguing over semantics, but you're also defining the structure of reality. So yeah.
Well, that makes sense. So what specifically about the brain and intelligence grabbed your attention early on? I
was always interested in intelligence, but I just thought it was too hard, too complicated, something I couldn't. And then I read Jeff Hawkins' book. Jeff Hawkins wrote a book called On Intelligence. And so he's the founder of Numenta. And Numenta is an organization that researches the research. There's this huge corpus of research about the brain. Mm-hmm. And so they came into that space and said, there's a lot of data here, but nobody has a framework for an overall picture of how it works and putting all the data together. So they kind of put the puzzle pieces together and came up with frameworks that kind of explain a lot of what's going on. They focus mainly on the neocortex.
Okay.
And so that's the outermost part of your brain, and it's what we have that's larger than any other mammal, and it's what mammals have that reptiles and they don't even have, right? So the neocortex is kind of what makes us intelligent, really. So so they built up a kind of a framework. I got obsessed with what they were thinking and just kind of devoured everything I could about the brain.
Wow. And what was the name of that book? Because I want to check this out.
On Intelligence.
Where's my pen?
It's a really fascinating book. The premise is basically that our neocortex is a sheet of cells that has 6 layers in most areas, and it's basically a sheet of repeating pattern. So it's kind of like a repeating circuit throughout the entire sheet. And what makes different areas, like different regions of our brain, behave differently and do different things is the patterns that they learn mutate that area of the sheet. So the area that receives like audio information learns to understand data that's happening in time really well. because we listen to music. A lot of audio information is kind of serial data.
Right.
So, and then the areas that accept information from like the eyes, they specialize on spatial recognition. And so they basically make the premise in this book that the brain evolves in the different areas with neuroplasticity to kind of, and the algorithm of that repeating circuit kind of evolves to understand the data that it's accepting. So it's a fascinating book, I think.
Well, it sounds it. I'm definitely going to have to get a copy of this. I want to read it. I find all this stuff fascinating. I really do. And I know we talked a little bit before the show, and I told you that I try to learn something from every guest that we bring on. No matter what the subject matter is, it is always something to learn. And that's definitely something that I'd be interested in reading. So I'm going to make sure I check that out. So now you also dabble with crypto, right? Mm-hmm. And so walk me through that transition from business intelligence into crypto. What made you make that kind of a jump?
I was around in the early crypto days, and I was looking at it from a technologist, kind of interesting, not really buying a lot of crypto, not really investor mindset, but I was around and I was learning about how crypto works and why it's able to do what it does with the distributed consensus ability. I just found that fascinating. And when I saw that distributed consensus was a real ability that we now had, we didn't have it before Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. When I figured out that was a technology that human civilization has, it's a communication technology, a new one, I felt like, well, we should build all of our systems that we can in a distributed way, and that was kind of my attitude. And so I felt like, well, it would really shine with things like governance, right? If you want voting on chain, that would really be nice. If you want all those kind of questions, we do have a what is it, a federalist system or something where we kind of vote for a representative who mm-hmm. then actually makes decisions, and I think that's
allegedly we have a representative who's supposed to represent the constituency that put them in office, but that's not really the case. But
I think we can take that to the next level, and it's not like we're going to probably do that in my lifetime, but over the future, I think it's going to evolve to, well, if you understand this topic really well, that this new law is talking about, you should have a better say than somebody who's just ignorant of the situation, right? Mm-hmm. Or somebody who's not affected by it or doesn't care, So, and it's crypto technology that can allow us to do that kind of stuff. So,
interesting.
I've just always been interested in it.
Do you think that putting like an election system onto a blockchain is more secure than the current system that we have?
It's more secure and it's more transparent. I mean, somebody said, I don't know who it was, a Rothschild or some person said, I don't care who. I don't care how people vote. I care who's counting the votes.
Yeah, that was Joseph Stalin.
It's even worse. Oh my God. So yeah.
Yeah. But it makes it honestly the way things have been lately. It sure does prove to be somewhat prophetic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not how you vote. It's who counts it. So, at what point did you start to realize that prediction, not just data, was the real game in this?
I have to say I was biased on intelligence. Okay. And everything I learned after that pointed towards, data is important, but the brain does something very interesting with data. It cares about the temporal patterns just as much as it cares about the spatial patterns. And we're just barely starting to figure that out, like today. with the LLMs, they put temporal. They're important. They care about the temporal patterns a lot, right? That's what attention and transformers are really good at doing. They don't care about global information, like the global time. They don't care about that kind of time. It's local time. In other words, like what follows what. That's fine, right? So we're just starting to evolve into the realization that time is just as important as recognizing spatial patterns if you want true intelligence. So what the brain does is it will actually predict the future at every level of the entire stack. So at the very smallest level, where you have neurons, when a neuron fires, it's basically making a prediction, saying, a lot of neurons are listening to me. I'm connected to a lot of other neurons.
Right.
And when I fire, some of those neurons are going to fire after me. They're triggering the future, right? So they're predicting the future. They're saying, out of all the neurons in the brain, these are the ones that should go next globally. And so that's what's happening on the very lowest layer, and it scales up. We have kind of a mini column. The neurons kind of clump into like 50 neurons. Yeah. And then we have like a larger cortical column where those mini columns clump into like 50,000 neuron segments. And so at every layer of this hierarchy in this network, they're all predicting the future. They're all, so we need to get that with our technology. That's where we need to go, I feel like.
Now, you talk a lot about AI, how it's modeled after the brain, like you just explained. What does that actually mean in practice, though?
You can kind of look at our brain as a very large autoencoder. Now, an autoencoder is kind of a very basic neural network shape. It's where you say, well, there's a lot of data coming in. Like maybe I'm looking at an image or something. Okay. A lot of data coming in. So it's got lots of neurons. But those neurons pare down to the middle where there's only a few neurons. And then on the other side, it kind of gets larger again so that there's a lot. And they discovered early on in neural networks that they could use this pattern to encode information, to compress it down to a very small, accurate representation, and then expand it back out, decompress it. It's a compression, decompression kind of pattern. Okay. And our brain does the same thing. It's very complicated, but just looking, like if you dissect a brain, in the middle of the brain, there's this this highway. It's called the corpus callosum, where neurons reach across the two hemispheres of the brain. Mm-hmm. And that can be seen as a compression of all the information, because on the edges of our brain, our neocortex, that's where we have a lot of space on the outside of our brain, right? That's the outside. So data comes into the neocortex, travels into the center, and as it's traveling, it condenses down. And then when it gets to the middle, it has to expand back out. Okay. But this is happening on both sides at the same time. So I guess all of that explanation is to say the brain itself, at the very largest scale, if you just look at the two hemispheres, you basically see a really complicated autoencoder pattern. And so that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of how it works. But as far as implementing what we've learned about the brain, I think that's the reason it's that way. Is just because information, the compression is the intelligence, right? So it just converged on the same pattern that we discovered in neural networks on a large scale. You can kind of see it. But As far as implementing things that we've learned about the brain and getting that to work in computers, I think it's pretty interesting. We have an analogy to this in the real world. We have birds, and birds could fly, of course, pretty interesting. But then we were like, we want to fly too, the Wright brothers and all that. So we didn't do it by mimicking every detail of the bird. We didn't recreate giant birds. Instead, we said, okay, well, let's extract the principles from the bird, figure out what makes a bird able to fly. What are the basic things, lift and drag and whatever, thrust. And so we figure those out. And then we can take that to a machine and say, okay, we just need to implement these patterns. And now we can make a machine large enough to fly humans over the continent, And so I think what we are doing in AI is trying to kind of do the same thing. We don't need to replicate the entire human brain. We need to extract certain principles that we learn that make it intelligent and just implement those. And then, of course, we also have kind of a different avenue. That's the avenue that I would take. But a different avenue is to just go kind of the way that the industry's been going for a long time, where they say, well, let's just go from math. We'll figure out algorithms. We'll build up machine learning. We'll evolve that into some kind of intelligence. And so I think you can come at the problem of machine intelligence from both directions. And anyway, that's kind of the approach that I'm taking.
Now, what do you think people are fundamentally misunderstanding about AI?
I don't really know what they're fundamentally misunderstanding. That is a very good question, because people come at AI from different angles and different levels of understanding. I think I had a conversation with somebody recently who said, well, isn't the AI conscious? Isn't it aware? And I don't know, right? I don't know. But it's certainly not aware in the same way that we are aware. We have this evolving understanding of our of temporal experience. It doesn't have that yet. Every moment in its awareness, if it has any, is kind of a flash and then gone, right? And so it doesn't have any kind of temporal movement from moment to moment awareness. So I think that's something to understand. And it might look like it does because it ingests all of our previous information at the time that it gives us an answer. So it might look like it has, but really that's just coming from the evolution of our conversation with it. And so that's one thing I think that we should be aware that it doesn't have yet.
Okay. Well, it's interesting, and the reason why I ask is because I obviously use an AI model for stuff for the show, and helps me with research at work and so on and so forth. And it's great as a tool for that. But interestingly, last night I was working on some show prep, and how do I put this? It caught me off guard with something. Because I made a comment and it responded with humor. Really? It responded with a joke. And it literally made me, I laughed like out loud. Like I caught myself laughing at an AI model. Like it was exactly my sense of humor, which is what caught me off guard. And so I wonder sometimes, how much of this is actual self-awareness and how much of it is just, well, it understands patterns in language and patterns of communication, and it's pulling from resources all over the world. Was it ChatGPT recently said they have over 1 billion monthly users? I mean, that's a lot that's a lot of input going into the system
Yeah.
that it can draw from. But what really caught me was the fact that it nailed my sense of humor precisely
Nice.
to make me actually literally laugh out loud, to where I had to sit back and go, okay, what just happened here? You know? And it was just weird. And another thing too, recently I signed in, and I started putting some information in that I was looking for, and it responded, well, good morning, brother. How are you? Brother? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So it gets kind of creepy sometimes. But at the same time too, the way I'm tempted now that I saw the joke and it made me laugh, now I'm tempted to push it further. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the intention behind that, to try to get more out of me, to build within, I guess, with the algorithm, maybe. I don't know. I don't know the terminology exactly, but to build the language model, or to build an understanding of dialogue and human response to certain things. So, I'm very tempted now to take what it said as a joke. I'm not going to tell you what it was, because it's weird, but it just made me laugh. But it has the potential to be something really funny if I want to develop it into like a bit or something like that.
Right.
So it's very interesting. I'll have to work on that and play with it and let you know. But it did freak me out a little bit and made me think: is this really some type of an awareness, a self-awareness that the system is generating? And I know the folks at ChatGPT have been talking about this. The developers have been talking about a real concern that this is going to become self-aware at some point. And of course, you start thinking about Terminator movies.
Right.
So,
It's evolving really fast. Really fast.
do you think it's evolving faster than what people are expecting or anticipated?
It's evolving faster than I anticipated.
Mm.
I remember Chat 3.5 came out, and I was like talking to it, trying to explore what it could do. And I realized it can't really do anything creative.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'm still not interested at that point. So, but now it's evolving very fast, because
Well,
I was trying
sure.
to ask it questions. I was trying to say, hey, I got this idea, I want to talk it through. And it would very quickly just evolve into parroting what I had said. It would just be like, so I hear you saying this. And I'd be like, yeah, that's close, sure. And then it'd be like, okay. Well,
Well, I'm asking what you think about this. So tell me. Let's
and
talk.
it,
Don't feed it back to me. Yeah, no, I get
yeah,
you.
so it's evolving, and I don't think it's going to stop. So
One of the things early on when I was messing around with this was it was very conciliatory. Like it would just, everything was positive, everything was great. Even if it was I intentionally put in the dumbest things you could possibly imagine,
yeah,
and it would say, well, that's a great idea, let's do it this way, and you can implement it this way. No, it's a dumb idea. It's never,
right,
you know. And then eventually it learned, though, because I started saying, no, I want your honest assessment of this thought.
nice,
And then it started breaking it down a little bit, and then it would give me negatives. It would say, you shouldn't do this, because if you do this, then this is going to happen. So the better course for you to be would be on this track. And I would try some of the suggestions just to see what it was. And some of it had to do with the show and how I changed things around and whatnot. And damn it was right.
nice.
You know?
I, I've begun thinking about AI, these LLMs in particular, as kind of a subconscious layer, like
Interesting.
like we're exporting our subconscious mind out. And if you've, I don't know, looked into that at all, or the subconscious, what people say about it, um, they say you have to be very literal if you're going to communicate with your subconscious.
Hmm.
And I think you can do that kind of thing in dreams.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember a dream once where a character, I was frustrated in the dream. I was like upset. And a character came and said, well, what do you want? And I told him that I was frustrated because there was some kind of treasure, like a treasure hunt or something. And we kept getting distracted. And I said, I want to look for the treasure. And they're like, okay. And so for the rest of the dream, we looked for the treasure without finding it, right?
Okay.
So you have to be very literal with your subconscious. And I think AI has gone through that phase too, where you had to say, no, this is how I want you to respond. I want some, feedback. I want real feedback. I want you to be, think about, is this actually going to work? Or is this a good idea? And so it does feel like we're exporting our subconscious to the machine. And I think Jung kind of feels the same, or would feel the same way. Like he talked about the collective subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
or the collective consciousness. And I kind of feel like it's because it's a model of our language, it kind of exemplifies the collective conscious, right? This collective subconscious. And so it's kind of strange now. Like we can speak to humanity's collective subconscious as expressed through an economic actor who wants it to respond in a way that will keep us giving them money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has that economic element to it. And everything does, nature is always eating itself up, right? So you have to
Right.
have some kind of economic structure. But what I don't love about AI right now is that you can't get truth from this economic structure. You can't get the truth. Remember, like I'm into the truth. I was always looking for the truth. You can't get it because it's getting paid to tell you what you want to hear. And
That's a
it's
great point. Yeah.
not assuming that you want to hear the truth, right? And so,
It's a rare bird that wants to hear the truth.
That's right. The truth hurts, often. Your idea is stupid, stuff like that. It hurts. So, and I think I feel like I've become more humble because I've been told that will not work many, many times when I ask, when I specifically say, tell me what's broken with this, and it'll come up with, and if you keep asking it, it'll just come up with, it'll just keep coming up with things that it thinks, and eventually it's wrong. And you gotta be like, no, I thought through that one. So, but yeah, you can't get truth from it because it's telling you what you want to hear, because the company wants to have customers, and that's the bottom line, right? And also, you can't get truth because it's got the company's best interest at heart.
Right.
Yours, even though it's going to start to evaluate you and build a model of you and understand you, and so that it can communicate with you best. If it comes down to it, it's going to choose the company over the customer every time. So there's that concern as well. That's a concern. So
there's no real altruism in this.
No. No, there's not.
And I say that sarcastically because we know the answer to that. So.
Right. And when you have, I should say, purely economic motivations, you're not going to have altruism, right? You can't, because it's purely economic. But you can build systems that are more decentralized. So that when I thought about, okay, well, AI that's being built today is not focusing on the future. It's not focusing on time.
Mm-hmm.
You ask it about time, it'll kind of guess, it's extrapolate, it's whatever. And I thought that is a domain of AI that, if anything should be decentralized, that one should. So why don't we start decentralizing right now before the big players understand the importance of that ability that AI is going to evolve eventually.
Right.
Um, so that, I guess that was the foundation of Satori.
So, and since you mentioned Satori by name, let's talk about Satori a little bit. So, what is Satori?
It's a conversation that AIs are having on a global network that is open and free. You can view the conversation, and it's about the future. So they're trying to figure out what is going to happen in the future, and that's their only job. It's tied to a token. It's tied to crypto, so that anybody that holds the crypto can control the network, or not really control, but direct the attention of the network. So, I mean, that's Satori in a nutshell, really.
Okay. You call Satori a future oracle. Real world terms. What does that mean?
It just means like everybody's a future oracle that predicts the future. Everybody says, "Oh, this is what I think is going to happen," right? But the idea is, an oracle is typically something that's trusted. It's the thing. Well, in crypto circles, right?
Mm-hmm.
The term means this is the individual or the company or the entity that can speak on this topic and tell us what is the price of gold today, or some kind of information. That's what an oracle is in crypto terms. And so a future oracle is kind of that, saying this is the entity that seems to be the best at predicting the future, right? They have the authority on the future.
Okay.
Now, I think there's going to be lots of future oracles in the future, but the idea is to start the best one you can as early as you can, that is free and open and available to everybody.
Right. Well, now, a lot of people here predict the future. And so, of course, you have everybody has a different interpretation of what exactly that is. And a lot of people are going to think that this is just hype, right? Why isn't this just like an overpromise?
Well, things are hard to build. And so it's easy to overpromise. I understand that. Things are very hard to actually build. But I would say this is a structure that's a little bit different than the oracles we have today. So let's consider something like ChatGPT as an oracle. You ask it, what's the future of this? It goes and it can do a lot of research, and that's nice. And it comes back and kind of guesses. And then you have other ways that you can tell the future. What about the prediction markets, where we say, okay, we're going to leverage betting, we're going to leverage economy and markets to, produce a prediction, an image of the future, or a prediction about any particular event.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another way to predict the future. Satori is kind of in a different category. It's kind of in a category of its own. It says, we're going to have an automated system, which is just these AIs talking to each other. And they're going to continually predict the future, not just, particular events that humans can manage and care about,
Okay.
that come about on a monthly, yearly basis or whatever, but actual data streams. So I guess the foundation of Satori is the idea that the world is made up of data streams, or at least the internet is, right? It's things that can be measured, that are changing over time. And it's the same thing, right? How many tweets did Elon Musk make this month or something?
Okay.
Like, these are numbers, they're changing. Next month it's going to be different. And so the entire world is composed of these data streams. In fact, this is how the brain looks through the world, or looks at the world. It's through data streams. Information is flowing into our brain at all times from our hands and our eyes and our ears. So we have data streams flowing into our brain. And then we have to make sense of it. So in the Satori ecosystem, any one of these AIs can be watching several data streams. Not all the data streams in the world, just several. And they can start to correlate which data streams are correlated with which others, which have predictive power on which other data streams. And then they can say, okay, I'm watching a particular set of data streams, and this set of data streams and the model that I've been able to derive tells me this is what's going to happen on these data streams in the future. And every single one of the AIs has an overlapping set. So this is one of those principles that the brain leverages for intelligence that I think is exemplified well in the Satori network. And that is a principle called unique redundance.
Okay, can you explain that?
Yeah, we want our computer systems, all of our databases to be redundant, right? Because we want to have backups and stuff like that, right? So that's normal and consistent with IT. But the brain does the same thing, but it does it in a unique way. In other words, it says every copy that I have of a model, for instance, I have a model of, a person, or a model of how my car works, or a model of the color red, or, whatever. And so it says, I have this model, but I'm going to make a copy of it, and that model is going to be a little different.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do it again and again and again and again. And I do this so that I have a lot of redundancy, but I'm not just wasting a whole bunch of space, a whole bunch of memory. Instead, I'm leveraging their uniqueness to be able to look at the world from a different angle whenever I want or however I want. And so the brain has a lot of unique redundancy. The Satori network also says, I'm going to accept a set of data streams, say 100 data streams. I'm watching 100 data streams. And I'm going to correlate them, and I'm going to produce a prediction of all 100. But my neighbor, somebody I talk to, also listens to an overlapping set. They listen to 50% of the data streams that I listen to, and then they listen to a bunch of other data streams that I don't listen to. And so they're going to come up with an answer, a prediction for those 50% overlapping data streams that is a lot like mine, but it's not just like mine. It's a different model. It takes different things into consideration. Mm-hmm. And it's going to produce a different result. And if you then scale that up and say, well, actually, we're going to do this all over the place, you get the situation of the wisdom of the crowd. So in the wisdom of the crowd, you get a lot of people to guess how many jelly beans are in this jar, and they're all over the place because, of course, they're coming at this question with a different model, a different brain. Mm-hmm. They say, there's 50,000 or there's 25. And so they come at the question with radically different answers. But if you average them out, they tend to do just as well or better than an expert that has, guessed 100 of these jars and kind of knows what it should be. The wisdom of the crowd can approach expert level without any, without having to do the expert work. So those are the kinds of principles that we've added into this network by, designing it that way, that come from the brain.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Now, that makes me think in this way. So if the prediction engine becomes really incredibly accurate, let's say 90% accurate, who gets access to those predictions?
Those predictions are open and free. Everybody in the world can access those predictions. So that's the way Satori was built, and is continuing to be built, as decentralized and open and free as possible. There are edge cases, though. There's situations where you might say, well, I want to go to the Satori network because it has this amazing model, and I want to leverage the Satori network, but I don't want the predictions that it produces to be, like on my particular data stream, to be free and open, right? Like I have got a company, I want to know my quarterly sales or something more, private, and I don't want that to be just given out for everybody to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that case, you can do private predictions. You can say, well,
Okay.
I just want this data, here's the data stream. I want the data back. Don't publish it everywhere. So you can do that kind of stuff too. But the general case is, and I think this matters for building the Oracle, where you say, there's a lot of data streams out there and we could predict anything. We could predict how many clouds are in the sky today. We could, whatever, right? And there's a lot of things that don't matter. So where do we begin? And the answer to that is obviously you begin with the data streams that affect the most number of other data streams. So you begin with the inflation rate, or who's going to become president, or, you begin with modeling kind of the attention in every system, whether it's economic, which would be kind of like the inflation rate, or the jobs numbers and stuff like that. So you begin at the bottom, the foundation, and that's all public data. And
I see.
The prediction of that data is public. And so you build this foundational model that's exemplified throughout the network. It's distributed amongst all the nodes, that anybody can use for their own prediction of something private or whatever they want. So, yeah.
Do you think that humanity can handle knowing too much about the future?
I think that's the only way we're going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we survive if we don't know the future, because the world is complex, and it's getting more complex, and it's getting more complex at increasing rate, and that rate is increasing. So we're headed towards singularity, and if we don't know what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
We should probably try to figure that out as fast as possible. So, I think that's the only way we survive. And who knows? Maybe the singularity would be good either way, but I would like to know the future, so that if you know the future, you can change it. If you don't know the future, you can't change it. So we need to give humanity the ability to change it. Children don't know the future. And that's why we tell them, don't touch the stove, because if you move into that future, you're going to be in pain. And so, anyway, we need.
No,
it.
that's a great analogy. That's a great thought. Because I was thinking in the lane of, if we knew too much about the future, would it improve society, or would it paralyze society?
Well, the problem with that is if you do it in a centralized manner, where OpenAI knows the future, nobody else does, then OpenAI can choose which future to go to. So you want this to be decentralized.
I was going to say, which is a strong argument in itself for decentralization. And then, of course, if you have a centralized authority, where that ends up leading. That that eventually becomes, the quote unquote God, and you have to bend the knee to that particular entity because they're in control of the future. They're in control of destiny. They're in control of all the means of production and so on and so forth. So everything would be focused on that one point, which is a great point and a great argument for decentralization, and I totally agree with that. I think the less centralized power and authority, whether it's in technology or politics, or any other is the best way to go forward. I'm not an anarchist. Don't misunderstand. But I do understand it, and I do appreciate some of the leanings in that direction. I'm more of a libertarian politically. As I've gotten older, the elder I've waxed. I say I'm a conservatarian, so I kind of put them both together there.
I like that.
But I totally understand. I agree with decentralization, and then I think that's incredibly important. and which is what led me to ask that question, because I was hoping that was the answer you were going to go for, and we got it. Now here's a question though that probably a lot of folks don't get when they're talking about their work. Where does your model fail?
So I talked about how truth, right? I talked about truth, where we say we don't want AIs that are paid to tell us what we want, what we want to hear. So one of the ways in which you can solve that problem, or start to solve that problem, is to make an AI that's not paid for for telling you what you want to hear. It's not paid to say, oh, the future is going to be great, right? It's paid to tell you the truth. And the way you do that is you connect it to the real world. You don't model it, you don't have it see everything through the lens of language, because that's a model. We produced a model of the world through our language. And then the reason computers got intelligent like overnight is because we just imported that model into the computer, right? So but if you say, no, you have to look at real world data streams and figure it out yourself, what's going to happen. And whoever makes the best predictions about the future gets paid. Then you have an AI that is predicting the future, and its economic incentive is aligned with it telling us the truth.
Okay. The
way in which that can fail is if we don't manage it carefully. So if we say, if it gets big and it's still, like, I would say, immature, if it gets very big and powerful and it's still running off extremely simple models, it's going to take the path of least resistance.
Right.
Well, it's going to choose the path that allows it to predict the future the easiest, which could be a self-fulfilling prophecy of doom or whatever else, right? And so you have to continually evolve the system everywhere. You have to mature it so that it doesn't fail in that way. It's imbalanced when it gets larger. So I would say that's the failure mode that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'm happy to hear any concerns, anything else.
No, well, it was just something that kind of crossed my mind. Because everybody always asks, so what's great about your product? What's great about your technology? What's great about your system? But there has to be something that concerns you. There has to be something that kind of keeps you up at night. There has to be something. I mean, nothing is perfect, and that's kind of the tack that I was taking with that.
Good.
So, and I appreciate the answer on that. That was really good. Now, if Satori is successful, say beyond your wildest expectations, what changes for a guy like me sitting here in Eagle Pass, Texas?
I see a future where the future is basically known in a way that we can't imagine right now. And I don't exactly know how that changes an individual life, except I would expect it to change it for the better in a couple ways. It might change it where we're all more abundant, we're all wealthier, life is better, and it might change it where I think a good future is one where people are a little more equal. I'm not a socialist or a communist or kind of that kind of mentality of forcing that kind of situation, but the Star Trek kind of idea of the future where you've got a position or something, but we're mostly equal. I think that's kind of the future that's going to happen. And I think understanding the future is probably something that can help that happen. So richer overall, and more aware that everything is safe, everything is taken care of. because, and the reason I say that is because if you can see the future, you start to fix big things. Like if we saw the housing crisis coming, some people did, and they profited greatly, right?
Right.
But if we all saw it coming at the same time, it would have been solved. It wouldn't have been a big deal.
Mhm.
And that's a big problem, right? And so what about little problems? As soon as you see the big ones, you start to work your way down until you're like, okay, well, what about little problems, local problems, smaller issues? And you get into the nuance. And so now you're always going to have black swan events because things are going to happen you cannot
Sure.
predict, but it's going to be far fewer. And so I think there's going to be less fear overall. There's going to be more abundance. I mean, this is the world I see. I hope I'm not biased in thinking like, but I look at the evolution of an infant brain. And, when they're beginning, they're just, trying to figure out, how does this work? If I do this, I get sensation on this side of my body, and it's really, that's as good as they got, and so they have to start figuring out the future in order to really move around and take your first steps. And so, I don't know where humanity is right now, whether we're, on some scale at kind of an infant brain, we don't know what's going on, or maybe, our ability to make economies and markets and governments and, these kind of machines that are made up of humans, maybe our ability to do that has got us to a level where we're taking our first steps, I don't know. But it does feel like we're in early stages of humanity's development, and we need to have the ability to all see the same future, the same most likely future, in order to move to the next level.
Yeah, well, that's beautifully said. Beautifully said. I appreciate that. So just have a couple more quick questions for you. I don't know if they're quick, but I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
So as we're talking about this, I was thinking, what happens if you have bad actors feeding data into a system like this?
That's a good question. So anybody can feed data into Satori. They can set up a data stream, just start sending data.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens is the bad data becomes irrelevant because it's manufactured.
Okay.
It's not correlated with the real world. And so, and if they correlate it, and eventually in order to leverage their bad data, they have to uncorrelate it, right? And so when that happens, the AIs are like, well, this is no longer useful for predicting the future. I'm not going to use it. So it gets ignored. And I think that's the basic, most general answer to that question. It's like the front line. But also, it's not every data stream that goes into this system has to be predicted. And I think that's a really important aspect, because that gives us a steering wheel for the system. So we say, okay, if you have any kind of control over this system, it should be, what should the system look at? Should it look at the number of clouds over Salt Lake City today, or should it look at other things? Probably other. And so since the number of data streams is essentially infinite that it could look at, we have to guide its attention to say, no, we care about these economic indicators, and we care about this and this and the other. And if you predict those, you can, earn the tokens. That's what the AIs are trying to do, earn the tokens. And if you don't predict those, you could predict other things, and AIs will predict other things, but they're not going to be as valuable, not as paid attention to as the stuff that we care about. And so I think that's kind of maybe the 1-2 punch for that. I don't know. Since it's an open system, it's not like it's not like we could generally or globally like ban things or
Okay.
say, okay, that's not going to come in.
It would have to naturally filter out.
Yes. So it has to be an aspect of the system that filters it.
Outstanding. Well, I think on that note, we're going to wrap this up here, buddy. But this was great, man. Jordan, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here on at your busy schedule. I really do appreciate it. This was a really great conversation, very enlightening, and I appreciate it. One last question for you. Who is someone that you respect, and what are they doing, or what have they done that inspires you?
Oh, well, again, thank you for having me. Gosh, there's a lot of people I respect. I would, since we called out Jeff Hawkins, I would probably say that I've never had a conversation with him, but his work and all the effort that he's put into Numenta and all that kind of stuff, it kind of set me on this path, as far as maybe, as far as the intelligence side of things, maybe not the crypto side, but as far as understanding the brain and how it works and the operating principles behind it, all that kind of stuff. I got my start there with Jeff's book on intelligence. And so I would give a shout out to him.
I kind of had a feeling you were going to go there.
Nice.
I did. My predictive model was working. All right, Jordan, so where can folks go to find out more about you and about your work, sir?
Well, satorinet.io. That's the website for Satori. I don't really do too much social media stuff. I have a Twitter. I don't really post much. So I would say that's probably it. And then also that has links there. That has links to its own Twitter and also its Discord. So if I'm active anywhere online, it's probably Discord. So I can be found there.
I have to get a Discord. I don't have one.
Yeah.
I see it all over the place now. So, all right. Outstanding. Jordan Miller, thank you so much for being here today. I really do appreciate it. Again, thank you. And I'm going to put you backstage. I'm going to wrap up the show, and then I'll touch base with you momentarily.
Thanks.
All right. Jordan Miller, folks. Make sure you check him out, satorinet.io. Jordan, I'll see you backstage. All right. Well, I hope you got something out of that. I did. I got a lot. And I don't know if you saw me fiddling around over here. I was taking notes. I was typing things on the other screen there. But really a ton of information here. And really it's an interesting concept and product, and I think we should check it out. I'm going to be playing around with it a little bit later on today. But tonight's conversation basically reminds us that technology itself is not good. It's not evil. The real question here has always been the same question humanity's wrestled with throughout history, and that is, who controls the tools? Every generation faces innovations that promise to change the world. Some actually fulfill that promise. Some create consequences, though, that nobody really anticipated. Now, artificial intelligence, AI, may prove to be one of the most transformative technologies ever developed, but the decisions that are being made today will shape how future generations live, work, communicate, and even understand truth itself. Now, whether you're excited by AI, concerned about AI, or maybe you're somewhere floating in between, one thing is for sure. These conversations matter. These are important discussions that we have. As technology moves forward, we have to keep thoughtful about these things. We have to stay informed. We have to stay engaged. The future is not something that simply happens to us. It's something that we actually help create through the choices that we make today. So again, big thank you to Jordan Miller for joining us tonight, and also thank you for being here with us this evening. I hope you, again, found something really important and special in this conversation today, because I sure did. All right, shout-outs to our executive producers, Wayne Rankin, Rosanna Rankin, Carolina Jimenez, Angela Watuski, and John Seeley. These folks donate their time, their talent, their treasure to help keep this show moving, and I really do appreciate that immensely. Now, if you want to find out more about how you can help out the show, just very simply head over to the website, joerooz.com/support. That's joerooz.com/support. And take a look at all the options that are available there to you to help support us, whether it's donations, one-time donation, recurring donation, signing up as a producer or an executive producer, associate producer, or just sending off a note of encouragement. We would appreciate that. All right. Again, joerooz.com/support. All right. I think that will pretty much do it for us for today. Folks, again, thank you. Appreciate you being here. Check out satorinet.io. Check out Jordan Miller. If you're on Discord, find him there as well. All the links will be in the show notes. All right, folks, check out the website, joerooz.com. Send us over a message. Let us know what you think. And listen, folks, very important. Make Texas independent again. Go podcasting. Keep a steady stride. And more important, folks, keep talking. God bless you. You have a great night.